Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Nerd Reads. I am Josue, the Rubik's Cuban, the Cuban Missile Crisis. All men must read. And today I'll be reading The New Gods. Now The New Gods is a Jack Kirby creation, and if you don't know Jack Kirby, I'm going to assume there's some new people here. I mean, of course. But Jack Kirby is the man who created Black Panther, Captain America, the Avengers. Jack Kirby was, in every sense of the word, a comic book legend. And his centennial is coming very soon. So I thought this would be a perfect time to pick up one of his most prolific series. The New Gods came after his departure from Marvel. He left Marvel in, there's some different accounts depending on if you hear from Stan Lee or if you hear from the Kirby estate, but they left on not so good terms. After he left, some of the work he did post Marvel, however, became maybe not as well known as what he did with, I mean, come on, you're doing Fantastic Four and the Avengers. I mean, you look at where they are, it's hard to make that comparison. But the New Gods are kind of an unknown, a huge unknown influence in most of what became the pop culture phenomenon of space and sci-fi. You don't have Star Wars without the New Gods. And hopefully by the end of these series, Jack Kirby's New Gods series is about 11 issues, so it's going to be 11 days of this. Hopefully by the end of this series, you get a better understanding of exactly why Jack Kirby is the forgotten father of Star Wars. Now, the New Gods story is Orion. Now, some background on the New Gods. Jack Kirby was a World War II soldier. He was also a religious man. What he did is he took his experiences in the war and his faith as a religious man, and he combined these into a story of fiction. As both him and Stan have always done, they've always used superheroes as a storytelling medium for more like real life stories. And the New Gods, the story of the New Gods tells a story of a descendant of deities who have been wrapped in a centuries-long war. Before the New Gods, they were the old gods, and they fought for the safety of Earth. One side fought for the dominion of Earth, the others fought for the safety of Earth. Their war consumed them both, and they died. From the ashes of the old gods came the new gods. New Genesis was formed, and New Genesis was, in every sense of the word, heaven. The opposite, Apocalypse, was, in every sense of the word, hell. New Genesis was ruled by Highfather. Apocalypse was ruled by Darkseid. Now, you all know Darkseid. Now, it wasn't long before the two of them became wrapped in war once again. And so in order to form a truce, the two sides decided that they would exchange their firstborn sons. Highfather gave his son scot-free, which would later be known as Mr. Miracle. Darkseid gave Highfather his son Orion. Now, this pact was meant to sort of keep the peace. I guess like no one would dare attack the other side if they knew that their infant was there. So for a time, this peace was made up until the point that this story begins. So this story follows Orion. Orion, he is unaware that he is a son of Darkseid. This is something that they bring up very early on in the story, where characters like Metron, for example. Metron is a character, he's a new god who knows, he pretty much knows all. He is all-knowing. He can travel through time and space like a road. He can be everywhere, and just he knows everything. Metron himself, in this very first issue, makes a notice that Orion is Darkseid's son. Now, the story begins when Orion arrives in New Genesis, and already you see a little bit of how he reacts to everyone else. He's very different from most of the gods. Like, he very much loves a fight. He's somewhat aggressive. He's has the heart of a warrior in every sense of the word. Very different for the other new gods that surround him. He meets with Highfather and they consult with the source. Now the source is a power that is eternal. It is, you could say that is the life equation. Everything that is life, everything that gives of life is made of the source. And the source wall allows the gods of New Genesis to communicate with the source. They ask to communicate with the source, and the source provides them some instruction. It reads, Orion must go to Apokolips, then to Earth, then to war. Of course, you can't defy the source, so Orion prepares, more than ready and more than willing for a fight. It's at this moment that Metron makes a comment and he says, who better to slay the father than the son? So this is a very Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader comparison going on there. And if that seems obvious, then it's because, yes, like Orion was the inspiration for Luke Skywalker, as well as Darkseid is part of the inspiration for Darth Vader and the dark side of the Force itself. Darkseid is the god of evil. He is, if you would say that the Highfather is, and with the source wall and the life equation is a source of everything that is good and well balanced in the world, Darkseid and his anti-life equation is the exact opposite of that. So the story then follows where Orion lands in Apokolips and immediately he's surrounded by parademons. Now we'll get some really sweet parademon action in the upcoming Justice League movie. Can't wait for that. But Orion beats the stuffing out of these parademons, goes directly for Darkseid. He even asks, like, where are your more powerful masters? Like, y'all ain't shit to me. So he goes looking for Darkseid. Darkseid is not present, and he's confronted by Kalibak the Cruel. He struggles to fight Kalibak until Metron comes in and assists him. Now, Metron gives Orion a little bit of scolding, and he tells him that he'll need more than power to defeat Darkseid. Now, right there, you get a little bit of that Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan type of mentorship, where Metron is telling him, you have to use your head. All you do is fight before you think. Orion makes the statement that only power can defeat Darkseid. Without power, they're not really doing anything. Metron tells him that he's not thinking for the fact that he's here and Darkseid is already on Earth. Darkseid is already looking for the anti-life equation. Now, the anti-life equation is something that once Darkseid gets his hands on it, it is entirely like a mathematical equation. It follows the realm of thinking that pretty much math is a universal force in the universe. So death is an equation, like things like despair, fear, anger, revenge, jealousy, lust. All these things are an equation, and once exposed to that equation, mankind will succumb to all those feelings, then be slaves to the Lord of Evil. So Darkseid is probing human minds, as he believes that one human mind contains the anti-life equation. Once he finds it, he can then distribute that. He can then like expose everyone to that equation and pretty much just rule reality. We saw this actually happen in Final Crisis. That was part of the plot point where Darkseid got his hands on the equation and he just ruled all of Earth, and the multiverse itself was almost at his heel. Now, Metron reveals a very key part of New Gods lore, this device called the boom tube. Now, the boom tube is something that they use to travel across great distances. Metron was the architect of the boom tube. It is very similar to how he travels on his chair. He hands Orion a boom tube and tells him that he must free the humans who Darkseid has trapped and is probing their minds for the equation, and then head right to Earth and take the fight to Darkseid. Immediately, Orion frees the humans, scuffles with Kalibak, opens the boom tube, flees, and heads to Earth. As soon as he arrives on Earth, the sky crackles and flashes as Orion realizes that he's too late, as Darkseid is already there and he's making his movements. Now, this ends the first issue. It's very, very, very good. For a book that came out in 1971, it ages well. It's the kind of exciting sci-fi that you want to read. If you're used to any type of like adventuring hero type stories, like this is good for you. So you should definitely give it a check. This book holds up pretty well. Jack Kirby scripted and illustrated and colored this series. He was a beast. He was a beast back in the day. Like his work ethic was unparalleled. It's amazing. There's some rumors that he did like 100 pages a day. I can't imagine recording more than 3 episodes in a day, let alone do 100 pages. So yeah, like, I mean, his voracious appetite for creation is very much apparent in this series. I think that this is a bit of an underrated gem in pop culture and in comic books, because very few people, let me not say no one, but very few people have been able to take the New Gods after Jack Kirby and just like do anything close to what he did. Looking at you, Jeff Johns. But another thing about the New Gods is you can use it as an analogy to the Bible. So take Scott Free, for example, Mr. Miracle. He's kind of like Jesus. He was Highfather's son, and he was offered as a sacrifice to pretty much save humanity. The war of the gods would have consumed humanity, so they made this pact to stop it. Scott Free was sent off to live in Darkseid. Now imagine he's sent off to live with Darkseid. Now imagine Darkseid being your father and Granny Goodness being the only person that you have to turn to in a desperate time. That's a rough childhood. Like, you're tortured every day. You're treated absolutely horrible. You're suffering just so you can save humanity. So in very many ways, he's kind of a analogy for Jesus. Shouts to Tom King, who is currently writing Mr. Miracle. Like, he made this very impressive observation regarding Mr. Miracle, which I never saw him that way. But if you look at Mr. Miracle as a Jesus analog, it totally fits. If you look at Highfather with his shepherd staff as God, which he is, he gave his son away to be tortured just so humanity could be saved. It's really deep. So I think that, yeah, like, it's amazing that this happened in 1971. Even to this day, it still holds up. Back to my statement about how this influenced so much of pop culture. In 1971, when Jack Kirby was writing this story, this is a true story. You can look this up anywhere. But Jack Kirby met with George Lucas, and Jack Kirby told George Lucas about the story he was writing. So it was a story of the New Gods, and he mentioned him the story of 2 babies separated at birth. He mentioned to him the story of Orion, who was destined to defeat his father, who was a force of evil. He spoke of Highfather, who, very much like how Obi-Wan taught Luke to not give in to his more negative instincts, Highfather teaches Orion the same thing, in fear that he has the same evil that his father had within him. Further than that, Orion wields a power called the Astral Force, the Force. The source itself is similarly defined as the source a power that fills creation, a power that connects all of creation. And if you compare that to the force which penetrates and binds us, there's a few similarities there. Now, not only did Kirby actually tell George Lucas about this story in 1971, Star Wars New Hope was released in 1977. If I get this wrong, my nerd cred is done. But yes, I have no Google to check this right now. But yes, like in a dinner, George Lucas met with Roy Thomas, another comic book writer. And he told them about this movie that he was writing called Star Wars. Roy Thomas, after hearing everything about Star Wars, said that this sounds very close to Jack Kirby's The New Gods, to which George Lucas didn't give much of a response to. Now, I'm not saying that George Lucas stole his idea for Star Wars, but let's just say that it was heavily influenced by The New Gods. And I guess like Jack Kirby is Star Wars Papi. If you don't take my word for it, you can look it up. There's a very convincing article with facts and direct panel-to-panel comparisons of things said in this comic book that were repeated